I'd like to call the September 12th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No, I usually don't because it starts.
I will start the meeting with a roll call, please.
Carrie? Here. Walton?
Here.
Kimball?
Here.
Stephenson?
Here.
Schlotthauer?
Here.
Hampy? Here.
First on the agenda tonight is going to be development impact fee. So this, the commission serves as the development impact fee committee also. So we'll have a impact fee report. John, you going to present that? Okay.
This one.
Good evening, Commissioners. John Manley, Planning Manager here at the City of Post Falls, presenting the mentioned Development Impact Fee Report. So, impact fees, they're a requirement as a requirement by local government. It's required for annual report to be presented before you to kind of look at what has been expended and collected in regards to impact fees. And these fees, they're used to shift the cost of financing public utilities from the general taxpayers. The general principle of impact fees is that with growth, growth pays for their impacted growth, growth paying for itself. Idaho Code, Title 67, Chapter 82 of the Idaho Statutes, and Post Falls City Code also require this impact fee as well. You can see here that they're used for system improvements and create additional improvements. They're not used for like maintenance type items. They're system improvements. As far as the collection, they need to be expended within 8 years from the collection on a first in, first out FIFO methodology. There is a means to hold them longer, but it needs to be reasonable cause and have it be expended within 11 years. At this time, I'm not seen the latter part occur. They get expended within the 8 years. Here's a snapshot of fiscal year 22. You can see here that approximately just shy of $5 million was collected impact fees, with about $8 million being expended for the roads, parks, and public safety. Roads also includes multimodal. Here is the kind of an analysis of where the funds were collected from. You can see here for roads, impact fees, 2.3, about 2.2 for parks, and then you see the 500,000 for public safety, all amounting to that 4.9. Here's your expenditures on this side. You can see the 6 million for roads, parks being 1.3, with 36,000 being police. And on the right with the stars, that's their current balance for those funds. This kind of gives an overview of the projects. These numbers align with the previous slide, and here's a list of those projects for each one of those, for the roads, parks, public safety. I think in your memo kind of explained it just a slightly bit more than just this sheet, but that's them. This slide here is a snapshot of the history slide. What kind of is important to look at here with impact fees is you can see the collection side. You know, here on the roads, you're getting a 1.1, 1.4, 1.2, 3, and then you see the 500,000 for collection. But the expenditures, they'll go years is not spending very much, and then you get to fiscal year 22, and then now you have a $6 million expenditure. So it's kind of how both parks and roads kind of manage their system. They collect it for a while, and then they expend a lot of funds over a couple years on a couple big projects, or a handful. Here's once again an overview. That's kind of a quick little presentation. Any questions on the memo and this data?
I just have a quick question. What does public safety cover? What's the expenditure?
Thanks for asking. That is the police department.
Okay, I wondered. Okay, thank you.
How about your other revenue there?
Other revenue can come from forms like grants and other sources of funding that's been negotiated potentially from like an urban renewal district. You may get revenue put in for a project as a share.
So-
I don't know in this particular case, the project that received that. Rob Paulus here with the engineering might be able to answer the specifics in that if you want to know. Okay.
Commissioners, Robert Pauls, Assistant City Engineer. In the roads area of expenditures, or actually in the other revenues that were received, the City of Post Falls received revenues back from the Urban Renewal District for projects that were done on the State Highway 41. That was our participation in the traffic signals that were constructed. Also, there were urban renewal dollars that were received to help reimburse some of the costs of the pole line and Cecil roundabout that was constructed last year.
Thanks.
And as a note, there's no decision that needs to be had on this item. It's more of a report and for you guys to ask questions.
How about fire and EMS? I know that just started this year. Is it still too early to see any numbers for '23?
Well, fire and EMS, we collect on behalf of them,
Mhm.
and they manage their expenditures and collection of that system. At this point in time, I haven't reported back on I haven't updated this report to reflect the management of their monies.
Have you started collecting for them?
Yes, we have started collecting funds for them on their behalf.
Is everybody in the county doing that?
I believe, yeah, there's a participation of the municipalities in the area. They had to go through an agreement with each municipality on their own, and then once we got into our own agreement, which was before some other communities, then we started collecting.
Yeah,
Phil, it looks like
I think we started collecting them first, and I think we've been collecting them for almost a year now. And then everybody else kind of followed suit. So I believe Rathdrum and Coeur d'Alene are also collecting for them as well.
Yeah, I know recently there was some debate over that with some of the municipalities, but
So that's, the debate has been with the county, Kootenai County, not Kootenai County Fire and EMS. Kootenai County has been looking at having jurisdictions collect impact fees for the county. So there's some negotiations happening there in regards to parks and the sheriff's department and the jail and some of those things. So.
Any other questions? Thanks.
Right.
All right, next item is ceremonies, announcements, appointments, or presentations.
Yeah, so a couple one oddball is a,
And real quick, we'll just close out the Impact Fee Advisory Committee and then
Oh, okay.
just
Kind of-
gavel in the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay. Closing out the Impact Fee Committee and opening up the regular meeting. Cool.
yeah, so back to ceremonies, announcements, appointments, presentations. So a little bit on a fun note, this is National Video Games Day. So if there's any gamers, today's the day, I guess, to celebrate. It's also National Police Women's Day. So this day was obviously by the title meant to remember and acknowledge women in the police force. Looked up, about 10% of the police force nationally are women. A couple of workshops to discuss. One of them is with the Kootenai County. They are looking at a workshop for a joint P&Z consortium, more or less, for a P&Z workshop on November 2nd from 5:30 to 7:30. There was a question by Mr. Stephenson, do you guys each have to RSVP, or could you coordinate with city staff and we can respond? We'd be able to do the latter, as far as if you guys want to just send in a response, and then we can communicate with, I believe it's Greta, who's heading this up. We can send her and give her the attendance on that.
And what's the purpose of that workshop?
It's very similar to the one we had last year that, I don't know if you, but it's all the different planning and zonings from the different cities, city council, other city attorneys. And I forget there was, what is Greta's over, the Connect Kootenai, I think it is?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of a hodgepodge just to get everybody together, tell what they're talking about, and then everybody can kind of talk. It was good discussion last year.
Gotcha.
Then another workshop that the planning staff here would like to kind of get a poll, and we can send something out too. But ideally, September 26th, we'd like to do a workshop on tiny homes so we can bring the tiny home ordinance potentially before you on October 12th, I believe. And so we'd be looking at not having really anything on the agenda other than a workshop and meeting on the 26th in the basement conference room right around 5:30 if it can work out. So
Is it not, we don't have the ordinance yet that we talked about last
we
year?
had a draft ordinance. And we had I think a joint workshop initially. There were some questions on from council regarding how tiny homes are dealt with nationally. We've had that workshop follow up with council. So now we need to follow up with you and kind of let you guys know where we're at with it, get additional comments, see if we're ripe for bringing that ordinance on the 12th, see if there's, any new added info or any changes we need that would then derail that a little bit longer. But goal is to re-inform you guys and get reacquainted with it before we just throw a public hearing ordinance on a text amendment before you guys may have not seen it for 6 to 8 months.
Is that the same as the cottage home? Is that what we're talking about when we went through that?
Yeah, it's akin to a cottage home the way it's drafted. But
Okay.
it's morphed a little bit to allow for tiny homes.
Okay, because cottage homes were still like an 800 square foot minimum or something?
Yes, so
weren't
this
they?
goes below the 800 square foot.
Okay.
So it opens up opportunities for housing less than 800 square feet.
Okay.
So would you guys just send out an email?
Yeah, we'll
and
shoot out an
kinda do that
email
scheduling
and
thing?
check for availability. And
Perfect.
initially, though, our goal is to go for the 26th. So.
Okay.
Then lastly, not to steal Anna's thunder on it, but just to let you guys know, before you're on the table, when she gets to the handouts later in the agenda, that's what those handouts are for, is to go with her presentation. That's it for that.
Cool. All right. Any amendments to the agenda?
None.
All right, commission members, any declaration of conflict, ex parte contact, site visits?
Nope.
Seeing none. All right, John, could you go over the consent calendar, please?
Yeah, we got that single item of action item A, the meeting minutes from August 8th, 2023.
Okay. Y'all had a chance to look at that? We get a
Yep.
motion?
I move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
I second.
Got a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Carrie,
Yes.
Walton,
Yes.
Kimball,
Abstain?
Stephenson,
Yes.
Schlotthauer,
Yes.
Hampi.
Yes.
All right. Next item is citizen issues. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the commission on an issue that is not on the agenda tonight. Persons wishing to speak will have 5 minutes. Comments related to any pending public hearings, including decisions that may be appealed by city council, are out of order at this time. Repeating comments or the same or similar topics previously addressed are also out of order and will not be allowed. Comments regarding performance of city employees are inappropriate. And if you need to talk to somebody, please schedule an appointment. With that being said, is anybody that has any citizen issues that want to speak now that's not on the agenda tonight? All right. Number 4 on the agenda, unfinished or old business.
And there's none.
All right. Well, that'll bring us to the meat of the meeting here. We have a couple public hearings here. We'll go through them. And I know a lot of you already signed up, so if you want to sign up and speak during the public hearing, fill out the paperwork, bring it up front here, and you'll have your time to speak. We'll call people individually as we go through these. First one we'll start with is recommendation for the development agreement text amendment, file TA 2301, and John's going to present.
Yeah, so this one here is pretty quick to kind of go over. No need to have a PowerPoint. Really, if I can get, I'll just scroll this down. Post Falls Municipal Code, Section 1820-190, Development Agreements. This is that language that's currently there. As it sits now, when an annexation gets approved, they have 6 months to sign a development agreement. Many times it works out fine. You have someone that knows what they are going to do. We get through it and we get it signed within 6 months. At times, though, you have individuals, maybe it's for marketing reasons, changes in the market, it sells, market forces, that they are trying to maybe rethink things out or calibrate things, that the current 6 months brings on a little bit of time constraint. Staff believed that 12 months was potentially allowed us to have a little more flexibility in dealing with applicants that are looking at the annexation and get their zone, potentially market it at that point in time or for whatever reason. So that's it. We're just going from 6 months to 12 months to allow an applicant to sign that development agreement before it expired and have to go through the whole annexation process again.
Is 12 months common, not common among other areas, cities, for the type of agreements?
I don't know what other cities are doing as far as development agreements for time horizon. I just know from this current experience, we do have one applicant that the 6 months was overly constraining. We have another one that has gone out for about 4 years since the annexation approval. There's a lot of reasons why that particular one has gone out 4 years, but to go through the annexation process seems a little bit of a enduring experience. If you're out 7 months, 8 months, and then we're forced to by this code go to the whole 2 hearing process again.
Is there any significant cons to going out to 12 months versus 6?
I can't think of any cons. 12 months is still short enough to where the decision makers that made the decision would be relatively close enough in a time frame that it's pertinent to their decision.
Yeah, at some point, we don't want things languishing too long, and you have turnover on council and stuff like that. So we do want a time limit,
Sure.
but no matter what we pick, there's going to be issues kind of either way.
Yeah.
But by giving it a little bit more wiggle room, I think it strikes a appropriate balance.
Questions?
I definitely think it makes sense to kick it out to 12 months. It's one of those things where, for the most part, the development agreements are going to be pretty straightforward, but there are some here and there that are going to be a little more complex, and sometimes it takes a little bit more fleshing out. So kicking it out to 12 months keeps you from everyone from having to go back through a very potentially painful annexation process and time-consuming.
Sure.
So I think 12 months makes a lot of sense.
All right, there's nothing else. Looking for a motion for a recommendation to City Council, either approve or deny.
This public hearing.
Yeah, so it is a public hearing, so
Oh,
Yep.
open it up for
Close the
comment.
hearing.
oh yeah.
We have any
I'm all-
public comment?
No, I don't know. Do we have public comment?
We do not.
We do not have. I get messed up because I'm looking for like somebody.
And if I'm throwing you off because I'm standing up here, because I'm up here on the next
Usually you
one,
go
so-
sit down for a while.
Yeah, usually you sit, that's what messed me up. Okay. Any public comment was no.
Correct.
Okay. All right, any other questions for John?
No.
All right. So we'll close out the hearing. Now we can do a motion, right? All right.
My
Sorry about that.
comments regarding deliberation are the same. That's what I said before.
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity not to waste everybody's time, so I like it.
Yeah, seems like a benefit for both sides.
Yeah, I don't think 12 months is unreasonable.
All right. Sounds like
Yep.
everybody's in agreement. Somebody like to make a motion?
I'm not sure which one.
I would move to recommend approval of text amendment TA 23-1 to the city council.
I second.
First and second. May we roll call, please?
Hampe,
Yes.
Schlotthauer.
Yes.
Stephenson,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Walton,
Yes.
Carey.
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to city council. Next public hearing is food bank special use permit, file number SUP 23-3. And we'll open that, and John will also present this one.
So yeah, this is an interesting project because the city of Post Falls actually owns the land, and we'll see the site here in just a minute. But yeah, the Post Falls owns the land that the senior care facility and this proposed food bank would be located on through some long-term land use lease. So currently though, this property is zoned R3, and it does require a special use permit to operate a food bank on with the existing senior care facility. Here's a location as you see here for this site. It is just north of East 3rd Avenue, west of North Bay Street. It's the red hatched site located right here. Looking at the existing zoning and land uses in the vicinity and around this area, we have to the north, due north, we got a park and rec facility on industrial zone lands. To the northeast and east, we have a storage unit facility and a VFW. And to the west, we have high density housing, multifamily to the west. Looking at Exhibit A3, this was submitted with the applicant for the food bank. You see here the new addition of this area. To note, Brana with the food bank and with the senior care facility is also here. So if there's any questions regarding the site itself, being more or less a co-applicant on this, she can answer those types of questions in generalities. But you can see here, there really isn't a lot of changes to the existing parking lot being proposed. They got the addition, and we would review that as part of the building permit as the requirements for that. Here's the main floor, the upper floor type exhibits that was in your packet. Water provided by, I believe that's City of Post Falls actually there. Wastewater being City of Post Falls. And we've gone over the project description. Here's the land use table. We got 4 review criteria. The first criteria looks at the implementation of the special use will or will not conform to the purposes of the applicable zoning district. So in related to the food banks, this is the most germane. You can see here, community food bank, the R3 zone with the S. So that clearly denotes that it requires the special use permit, and same with the other services that are on that. So that's the purpose of this excerpt, to see if the other ones also would require a special use permit. Criteria B, whether the proposed use constitutes an allowable use as established by this chapter for the zoning district involved and complies with the applicable laws and ordinances. More or less, for this criteria, we are also defaulting to the same land use table and the special use permit as denoted. Third criteria is whether the proposed use will or will not be compatible with the health, safety, and welfare of the public and with the land uses in the vicinity. You can see here that staff more or less concluded by looking at the adjacent uses and with the adjoining road network that it would not have a negative impact on this element. You can see here where engineering identified it third as being a major collector and had sufficient capacity. The water reclamation, there are facilities in place to serve this. And here's where it states domestic water is serviced by the City of Post Falls. Fourth criteria delves into the comprehensive plan, goals, and policies. This is where more of the meat of the analysis for the special use permit occurs. So looking at goal 7, plan for and establish types of quantities of land uses in Post Falls, supporting the community needs and city's long-term sustainability. So one may conclude with the analysis that by allowing the food bank to expand and provide services for the community would meet some of the supporting needs and the communities of the community. Policy 1, support land use patterns that maintain and enhance community levels of service, foster the long-term health, safety of the community, maintain and enhance resident quality of life, promote compatible, well-designed development. I would say a food bank would fall in line definitely with the first 3. Policy 2, apply and revise zoning designations with careful consideration of the factors. Future land use mapping, compatibility with surrounding land uses, which we've kind of discussed. Infrastructure service plans and existing and traffic patterns have already been mentioned as its compatibility. Here's the agencies that were notified. Here's the comments received. We got Post Falls Police, they were neutral. Highway District, they had no comment, with Kootenai County Fire Rescue saying that they would comment at the time of the development, and School District neutral. Any questions for me at this time pertaining to those 4 criteria?
I have a question. Isn't construction or remodeling already in process on that building?
Yeah, there's already some construction going on out there.
Okay.
Yeah, we allowed the issuance of the, we allowed the issuance of the building permit with the applicant clearly known it was subject to the special use permit.
Okay.
So any sort of CO, it was at their own risk upon the review of this.
Okay. Thank you.
But it's already existing. I mean, there's already, I'm sorry, existing building there.
There's already an
It's-
existing building. Like I said, Brana, if she wants to, she can come up. Might be good for her to discuss kind of the ins and
Oh, I
outs
didn't
of
see
the addition.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. So yeah, there's currently the senior center facility is there, and the food bank operation is merging with the senior center operation, and we are adjusting the way the building is on the inside. But when it comes to the external use, about a third of it, the external, side of the building is going to be adjusted. We're going more up, so we're on the north side of the building, about a third of the building, we will be adding a second level, which is going to allow for more storage. So that's where the warehouse is going to be, to allow for more storage of the food bank
Okay.
product. We're adding a loading dock on the north side as well, because that's where the truck comes and unloads. But so about a third of the building will be, changed when it comes to
Okay.
externally. The rest of the building will remain as is, but internally it'll be adjusted a little bit
Some
more.
remodeling kind of in there.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and the plan is that, so it's gonna be the warehouse on the north end, then we're gonna have a processing area, and then there's gonna be a market area, which is kind of the food bank shopping space.
Okay.
And then there's gonna be a senior feeding facility, a senior lunch area.
Okay.
And a kitchen is in between right next to the market, in between the processing and the market area.
Okay.
So that's where it's a commercial kitchen that's staying.
Okay, that helps make sense of kind of the plan here.
plans.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
No problem. Yeah.
And also to mention, another good thing about this potential location is 3rd Avenue. It is along a transit route, which a lot of times individuals that need these services do need transit. So keeping it on, as they needed expansion, keeping it on 3rd Avenue was advantageous.
And what is to the east?
East is the VFW.
Okay, all right. I was thinking it was something like that, and then there's storage units.
To the northeast.
Okay. And were they a special use as well? It seems
They've
like
been
they
there for a
came-
long time. They've been there my
Okay.
entire duration I've
okay.
been here with the city.
That's all I have.
All right. Any other questions?
No.
Do we have an applicant? Or
There
is
was
it
kind of a joint
kind of a joint thing?
applicant,
Okay.
so that's already occurred.
Okay, that's what I thought. Right. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. All right. Is there any public testimony for this one?
No.
Nothing? All right. The criteria here.
Well, I think, do we need to close the public hearing?
Oh, yeah. All right, close that out, do the criteria.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
My shoe's untied. I'm a little distracted over here.
No worries. Review criteria A, whether implementation of the special use permit would or would not conform to the purposes of the applicable zoning district. What's everybody think on that one?
I think it conforms to what's there already.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
agree.
so expanding on that.
The current use is a civic use. It's typical of a city-owned property as a civic use, and this is just an expansion of a civic use. So I think it meets what's already there, as
Mhm.
well as the purpose of that zoning district, even though it's kind of odd that it's R3. But whatever,
Probably been R3 for a long time.
probably has been.
All right, next criteria, whether the proposed use constitutes an allowable special use as established by this chapter in the zoning district involved and complies with all other applicable laws, ordinances, and regulations of the city and the state.
I think that was demonstrated by its existence in the table,
Yeah, exactly.
in the code.
It was.
Criteria 3, whether the proposed use will or will not be compatible with the health, safety, and welfare of the public, or with land uses within the vicinity of the proposal.
Pretty compatible.
Yeah,
Right.
pretty compatible.
It fits hand in glove with what's already there,
Yep.
and it also, I mean, it really speaks to the welfare of the public.
Absolutely.
And next one, whether the proposed use will or will not comply with the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan.
I think staff covered that pretty well,
Mm-hmm.
and it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, it does.
Right. Anything else to add? All right, with that being said, I will entertain a motion.
Okay, I will move to approve the Post Falls Food Bank, file number SUP-23-3, finding that it meets the approval criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code as outlined in our deliberations. And I don't believe we had any conditions, did we?
No, it's weird.
So it's not subject to any conditions. I direct the staff to prepare a reasoned decision.
Okay, we have a first,
Second.
and we have a second. Roll call, please.
Carrie,
Yes,
Walton,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Stephenson,
Yes.
Schlotthauer,
Yes.
Hampi.
Yes.
All righty. Next item tonight is the Mullan Vista Special Use Permit, file number SUP 23-2. I'll open that hearing. John Manley to present.
And this will be a normal public hearing where you have staff, applicant.
Gotcha. I can handle it now.
Yes, Mullan Villas, SUP 23-2. The owner of this is Dennis Decker, and the applicant is Drew Dittman of Lake City Engineering. They're asking for review and approval of a special use permit of 18 multifamily units to be developed with townhome construction on 1.27 acres per their submitted exhibit A3 that's in your packet. Location of this is north of East Mullan Avenue, west of North Syringa Street, right here in the red hatch where you see there. Looking at some of the surrounding zoning, you see the yellow there, that demarks the R1 single-family zoning district around that limited commercial site. To the east, you do see some limited commercial on the northwest corner of Syringa Street. Then south of Mullan Avenue and east of Syringa, you see that CCS, Community Commercial Services. It's more or less a medical core down there, south of Mullan Avenue. And then you see some R2 zoning just a little bit further to the west. Looking at the proposed site, I'm not going to go into a lot of details. I know the applicant can describe their project a little bit more detail than I will, but I did want to highlight that this potential proposal, as being a multifamily proposal, our design standards require some open space and as well as a landscape buffer. So they're providing a landscape buffer along all the western, northern, and eastern edges of this. There is one spot, staff still sees this as meeting the landscape buffer at this point, as they're meeting a fire turnaround. So they come around here, the actual greened area would be 8 feet, but the tree planting schedule and shrubbery would still meet the requirements for a 10-foot landscape. So there'd be really no difference on that aspect of that. Quick, here's a view to the west and north for those ones facing the adjacent neighbors that was denoted in that R1, absent of the landscape buffer that would be planted. Here's the internal view from the parking lot where you see the garages with the upper story. So you can see the 2-story proposal with the special use permit. Another item of clarity is they do provide a pedestrian connectivity for access and addressing along Mullan Avenue. So that'll be one additional element to meet our design standards for multifamily. Here's that landscape buffer that I mentioned, and here's where the difference between a single family against single family. So, and I kind of go into it in another slide, but I can cover it now. So townhomes are permitted outright, as you see here, and this is in the first criteria. So implementation of special use will or will not conform with the purposes of the applicable zoning district. So if they came in and did a townhome, 6 units or less per structure, you can see the P, it's permitted outright. If the townhome was on their own platted lot sharing a 0 lot line common wall, the product would be permitted outright. But being the fact that the way they want to do it is put it as a unit on a common lot, planning doesn't see that as a townhome anymore. They see that as a multifamily structure. It's kind of a weird nuance between building code and the planning division and how we see things slightly different. So it then now needs a special use permit, and it's now requiring that buffer yard, which a single family townhome would not require that. So the water provider here is the Ross Point Water District, with the wastewater being the city of Post Falls.
John,
Yep.
that's City of Post Falls water.
Is it?
Yes.
Well, thanks for that clarification. Let's see the issue with template slides. Thanks. And then, so what I went over here on the first criteria, and carrying that now to, sorry, I'm kind of going around. So there's criteria A. Criteria B is whether the proposed use will or will not be compatible with the health, safety, and welfare of the public and with the land uses in the vicinity. So you as a commission will look at what's being presented and with what the applicant and with what any sort of public comment is. But as far as the facts, looking at, as what I already mentioned, what the rights are on the property for single-family townhomes versus the multifamily townhomes, which is requiring the special use permit and with increased design standards compared to single-family townhomes. Looking at the transportation aspects of this for the health, safety, and welfare, engineering looked at this, and they did not anticipate that the 18 units negatively affecting Mullan Avenue as a minor arterial. and that the road network had the capacity to serve the proposal. Also, the site would be connected to city wastewater, and there's facilities in place to serve it, as well as the domestic water out in Mullan Avenue. And the last criteria looks at whether the proposed use will or will not comply with the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan. So looking at this, plan for and establish types of quantities of land uses in Post Falls supporting community needs and the city's long-term sustainability. That's why oftentimes we see diverse housing products, and we're encouraging diverse products as proposals. As far as policies, support land use patterns that maintain or enhance community levels of service, foster the long-term fiscal health of the community, maintain and enhance residential quality of life, promote compatibility with well-designed development. So looking at this site, being at this location, and I'll look at the enhanced residential quality of life. Some may deduce that if you're close to transit, close to commercial services, nearby medical, that the residents of this location would be able to utilize those as enhancing their lifestyle for those amenities nearby, as well as the other residents that are currently out there. Promote compatibility and well-designed development. In this case, I kind of gone over the design standards for multifamily. They assist mitigating some of the effects on adjacent uses, as well as promoting a designed environment to provide open space and a better lifestyle for those internally as well. Diversified housing assists with the long-term fiscal health of the community. Looking at policy 2, apply or revise zoning designations with careful considerations of the future land use mapping, compatibility with land uses, infrastructure and service plans, and existing and future traffic patterns, as well as looking at the goals and policies, which is in line with this criteria. So the future land use map designates this in this pink, that's what that is, as business commercial, and it includes and promotes the mixture of housing types built at moderate densities of at least 8 dwelling units per acre. Also in the comp plan, it steers you towards focus areas as part of the analysis. And this is in the Central Island focus area. And it does state within that to focus your higher density residential uses near your higher classified roadways. It also encourages infill development in this context area of the Central Island focus area. Then looking at the compatibility and surrounding land uses, kind of gone over the facts here regarding this proposal. These items have also been discussed regarding the infrastructure and service plans, as well as existing and future traffic patterns. Here's the agencies that were notified. Here's the comments received. You can see there was no negative comments from any of those agencies regarding this proposal. Any questions for me?
I have a question. This is all around the R1. Was that R1 on the future land map, that's all going to be limited commercial, right? Or that's what you're saying?
We'll go back to the future land use map.
Yeah.
So Mullan Avenue, if you were to go back in time, more than likely R1's not the most ideal zoning district along a corridor with the traffic and what will be on that traffic on Mullan Avenue, play it out 20 years. Not saying that the R1 there is not suitable, but you have a lot of uses that are along Mullan Avenue, be it medical and other commercial services, and you're going to see over time increased light and noise pollution specifically along that corridor. And so when you look at a future land use map, you don't always designate things, the land use what's today you designate on a future land use map the best category for how it may play out 20, 30 years from now as traffic increases and the city continues to evolve. So that's kind of loosely explains maybe that potential perceived disconnect between why is there R1 and then why is it designated business commercial.
Yeah, and, well, and the corner one there on Syringa and Mullan, is that the new dental or medical facility of some type that just went in? Is that why has been changed to LC now?
It was already LC, and so it was already limited commercial, and then they used the vested zoning district to place their business on that.
Okay, now, so our piece that we're looking at, when did it become LC?
I'd have to go back when exactly. I believe it was early in my time here.
Okay, is it blank, I mean, blank, is it empty, a vacant
It's
lot?
at a vacant lot with a pre-existing single-family home on, so you go to that location, there's a single-family home, and then this is the remaining vacant lot at that. So I believe it's in within 10 years being rezoned to limited commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I don't have the exact date of that.
No, that's okay, I just,
So for clarification, a townhome would be permitted, would not need a buffer?
As
but
a
they-
single-family townhome, meeting the definition of planning being on their own lot, so you own not only your house, but the land under it, then correct, then it would be conceived a single-family home like any other single-family home, owning their house and the land under it, and no buffer.
So with this plot of land right here, what would have to be done to that land to be able to put just a townhome in there instead of what they're proposing?
I'll go through a couple things. So, in order for this to go as a townhome, they could do a common parking lot and treat that as like, put that on like a tract of land. So it'd be like tract A, and it's a parking lot with shared access easements to and through that tract A. They'd have to plat lot lines down each one of those lot lines through this, so you'd get with 18 platted lots. They would have to, because in limited commercial, you do have to meet the medium density design standards. So they would have to go more or less maybe to 25-foot wide units, which may be as a difference to this product. So, and there'd be some other, that being said though, there'd be a path forward through like a PUD. You can do like a PUD and get some density exceptions potentially, but that's delving into more of other planning aspects. But yeah, there'd be a way to do that.
It just might change the amount of units that are there, maybe they're wider, just, it would look a lot different, but you could still put townhomes there.
Yeah, you potentially would end up with maybe a few less, I don't know what the number would be, a few less units. More likely, they'd still be 2 stories and you wouldn't have a buffer. There'd be no open space requirements, because we don't require open space with single family.
What is the open space requirement on this particular?
It's 300 square feet for each unit with more than 1 bedroom and 150 square feet for each 1 bedroom or less.
So do you know what that comes out to? Like how much of that 1.27 acres is required to be open space?
Well,
About.
you would ask the question that demand my readers. It's right over here.
6,000 square feet.
But yeah, the analysis right here, and the applicant can probably go into those
Okay.
details a little bit more about what's being provided. But they did meet, they calculate all their units, and they did use our code requirements for what's being proposed for open space about in this corner. And they do have to exempt out the buffer yard, because you can't use the required buffer yard as part of your open space calculations.
Okay.
Do you want me to read those? The open space
Yes,
calculation?
please do.
So the required 18 units at 300 square feet would be 5,400 square feet. They're providing semi-private 225 square feet for 18 units for 4,050 square feet, and common area of 2,000 square feet for a total of 6,050 square feet.
Okay. And the requirement was 5,400, basically. If it was calculated out of that, that's what you said, I think. We'll go with that.
Any other questions? Okay. Would applicant like to come up? All right. Name and address for the record, please.
I know. Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering, for the record, 126 East Poplar Avenue in the city of Coeur d'Alene. I apologize, I didn't have my presentation preloaded, so if you give me 2 seconds, I will load it. In fact, maybe not, it's not recognizing my system. It is? Chairman Stephenson, fellow commissioners, again, Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering, representing Chad Oakland tonight. He is the buyer of the property. Dennis Decker is the owner, as John had indicated. John covered most of what I was going to cover, so it's going to be a little bit of an overlap. But again, the property here is highlighted in red. You see it just on the north side of Mullan Avenue, west of Syringa. It's about 1.27 acres. We're asking for 18 units of, as John had indicated, townhouse construction, but because of the nuances between the building code and the zoning code, it actually falls under a multifamily use, but it's going to be townhouse construction. What that means is it's basically the same product, but we're subject to the multifamily design standards. So it's a little more stringent on our end. We've got some open space stuff that we've got to provide. We've got buffers that we've got to provide, as John had indicated. So it's a little more work on our end to do it this way, but it's the way we wanted to do it. The open space calculations are right here. You can see them there. We're providing about 6,050 square feet of open space, whereas we're only required to provide 5,400.
Okay.
In actuality, we're providing a little more than that because of the buffer. Your code doesn't allow us to count the buffer in that calculation, but really the buffer is open space. That's all the way around. So we're well above that open space criteria. So John had showed these, so I didn't realize he was going to do that, so I've added them. This is the front and rear elevations. You can see the 4, so each unit gets a garage, 1-car garage. The 4 interior units will access from the front, and the 2 exterior units will actually access, you can see, from the sides. But each unit gets their own patio in the back, you can see, so it's a little semi-private with a little fence on their patio. You can see those in the back, and you can see them again here on the side view. So you get a little privacy in your own backyard there. These are the 4 criteria. John went over them. These are what you're going to use to make your reasoned decision, so I'll go through these real quick. The first 2 are whether the implementation would or would not conform to the purposes of the zone. Again, it's zoned light commercial. Townhouses are an outright allowed use. We're considered multifamily, as I discussed, so we have to go through the special use permit process. So that really covers number 1 and 2. And again, here's the overall site plan. So if we were to build this, as the chairman had suggested, as townhouses, it would look very similar. I'm not sure we would lose units or not. But we wouldn't have the open space. We wouldn't have the landscape buffer. We wouldn't have some of the amenities that we're providing because we wouldn't be required to. So in essence, it would look more or less the same as it does now. It's just we're proposing to do it on 1 lot. It helps keep overall costs down. It's going to help keep rental costs down and help provide some of that missing housing that we're desperately in need of. Criteria number 3 is whether the proposed use will or will not be compatible with health, safety, welfare of the public or within land uses As John had indicated, on your zoning map, it's completely surrounded by residential property. You've got the medical corridor stuff to the south, on the south side of Mullan. So, it's residential up against residential, so it does fit and it does meet that criteria. And then criteria number 4 is the comprehensive plan, is it meet the goals and policies. I've listed a number of them that we think it meets. It's in our project narrative. I know you guys have read that. John went over it in his report, so I'm not gonna go through the comp plan in too much detail unless you have any questions on that. Couple of quick things, as John had indicated, water and sewer are both provided by the city of Post Falls, not Ross Point. It is considered an infill project. It's a 1.2 acre piece of property. It's got 1 rental house on it right now, so the majority of the land is vacant. So, any questions for me?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Is there parking on site other than the single garage for the units?
Yes. So each unit gets their own garage. There's a parking space in front of the garage, and then there's additional parking space in that common parking lot that you can see there. So we provide a total of 59 parking spaces for 18 units.
Okay, and these are for rental units?
They'll be for rental, yes.
Okay.
So you refer to them as townhomes, but they're not a condo, they're kind of an apartment or a condo?
Townhouse is, again, John had explained, it's a nuance between the building code and the zoning planning code.
Okay.
So the building code looks at them as a townhouse. They share a common wall between them. They're
Okay.
2 stories, they share a common wall. All the accesses are on the main floor. There's no access on the upper level.
Okay.
The zoning code looks at it a little differently because of some of the nuances in it, and therefore throws it into that multifamily category. So when we build it, we'll be subject to the townhouse building code requirements, but when we're looking to get the site plan approved, we're subject to the multifamily
So
standards.
the individual units cannot be owned separately, it's owned as a single building?
Correct. It'll be at 1 lot, so it'll be under one, all 18 units will be under 1 ownership.
Okay.
Mr. Dittman?
Yes, sir.
I've got a quick question. And it's kind of along the same lines. And I don't have a problem with rental. But with the townhome construction requirements being what they are, would that then allow the owner to, in the future, condo plat it if they decided to go that route for individual ownership?
Yes, you could. You could do it in the future and condo plat it. There's some caveats that go with it, as you're aware that there's issues. But yes, I could foresee it. It's not our plan to do that.
Right.
But it could be done.
Understood. I just wanted to point out, or at least understand if that is a
Yeah, so with
possibility
a
in the
condo
future.
plat, you
should
would
that-
be platting just the airspace of the unit itself, and everything else would be common ownership.
Right,
Yep.
right.
What type of buffer, as far as trees, shrubs, are you looking at for the surrounding
So
houses?
we don't have an actual formal landscape plan yet, but your code requires, and I don't remember which
It's
type.
4 deciduous trees, 4 evergreen trees, and I believe 10 shrubs for every 100 feet.
For every 100 feet, yeah. So it's pretty intense landscape buffer.
Any other questions?
Would like to add one comment, if there's no other questions for Drew. One reason for the difference between a townhome and how it's treated different from the building code and for zoning is the lens of looking at it is different. The building code is looking for the health, safety, and welfare of that residence and the public safety of that building. They're concerned about the building and the safety of those residents. Zoning, we're looking at how does that unit function and how does it relate to the land. So when it's on its own lot, like I mentioned, that's when we see it as a single-family home because you can purchase and sell in the MLS like no different than any other single-family home. When they're a unit on a common lot, one tax parcel, it's looking and smelling and feeling like a multifamily building where you have multiple units on one tax parcel. So we just look at at it completely different. In both scenarios, you're meeting the townhome for building code for the safety of those residents.
Any other questions? All right,
Thank
cool.
you.
Thank you. Public
Can I-
comment?
Can I ask, yeah, John, can I ask you one question? And this doesn't relate really, but then what's the difference between this and an apartment?
It's the type of construction. So a multifamily building is going to have to meet building code requirements for a multifamily building, for a multifamily unit, like a 3-story apartment. It's going to have different building code requirements, and I'm not the building official, I
Yeah, well,
can't
yeah,
speak to what
yeah.
those are.
So this couldn't be considered apartments because they're saying they're one,
They'd be considered a townhome from building code, and they would be submitting it for townhome design standards and building code requirements for this product. It wouldn't be a multifamily building per se, like a 3-story apartment.
John, I don't know if this is an appropriate time, but if it wasn't this project in this piece of land in this area, what other types of things might end up there?
You could put other commercial type uses, offices, most typical commercial, neighborhood commercial. You can't exceed, I believe it's 25% of the area for a structure. That being said, you look at any of your commercial businesses, by the time you put in parking swells, most your typical commercials seldom exceeds 25% just because of all the requirements. So it would look and smell like most of your commercial. Some of your higher end commercial, more than likely, wouldn't be allowed. But your general commercial sales and services, if you follow the land use table, are permitted there.
To Gibby, to answer your question, I have the table up on my phone here. So you could do restaurants, convenience stores, art gallery, general arts and tourism, libraries, electric power,
Which,
a
yeah,
whole plethora of things.
none of them would fit as good as more homes inside this area, right? Seems to me.
Hey, John,
Hmm.
it strikes me as odd that this is the one residential use that's outright permitted. How does everything else is special use permit? How did it come to be that townhouses are the one thing that's an outright permitted use in that zoning? Where'd that come from?
Admittedly, I wish I had a good answer for that. We've identified it as staff. We don't necessarily see that as a negative thing when you look at the limited commercial and a lot of where we have limited commercial zoned and on what corridors it's at. A lot of our limited commercial zones and existings are compatible with a permitted use outright in the limited commercial. That being said, in the multifamily, a lot of times limited commercial is near other adjacent single-family homes. So having a special use permit for that multifamily allows for the opportunity to provide buffering that you wouldn't get as a permitted outright single-family home.
Yeah.
It gets difficult if we're trying to take, say, a permitted townhome outright. You're a single-family home, but you got to also provide a buffer. Dancing that dance is a difficult task.
What's the density on, if it were to be a townhome, what's the density? What's the max density? How many townhomes per acre?
You need to meet the base density of the underlying zone within a range.
2,400 square foot minimum per
So
lot?
didn't I
Yeah.
see something about 6 townhomes or something? You put something up there?
Is this one
I'm
here?
not sure.
6 townhomes or less per structure is permitted.
Okay.
And the reasons for that, so you don't just line up like 24 townhomes all in a row, that you create some breaks
I
between
see
the
what you're saying,
buildings.
so that's, yeah, per actual building.
So you don't end up with a
Okay.
whole block of garages without any sort
Gotcha.
of opportunities for green space or pedestrian breaks.
Okay, that's where the 6 came from.
That's where
Okay.
the 6 comes from,
Okay.
yes.
At 2,400 per unit, or 24, let's see, excuse me. We'd be allowed at 23 at 2,400 square feet per unit. Or that property could get that many, 2,400 per square, 2,400 square feet. So that's 1.27 acres, equates to 23 units potential
Okay.
under the townhome code.
We do have public comment.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Okay.
Just-
Okay.
I'm seeing if there's any other questions.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, public comment now. Okay. All right, first one here, not wishing to speak in favor, Daniel Hummer. I support agenda item 5C. All right. Wishing to speak yes, in favor, Dennis Decker. So, like to come up? And just for anybody else, if you're gonna come up and speak, you have 4 minutes, just state your name and address. And for the audience members, just please allow them their 4 minutes, no comments, please.
My name is Dennis Decker. I just have a few things that I think helps. One of the things is the safety feature. I think that having townhomes where people are there, going to be there for some period of time versus having a apartment house or a night like a hotel aid or something of that nature where they come and go so fast, it's less safety for the tract of homes around them. The people that are already living there need to have that, and I think that having a townhome is a far better deal, in my opinion. The house that is there is very old. It's very old. And the facelift that it will receive in removing that house and allowing the contractor to bring something to the city of Post Falls that's a far better looking and a cleaner spot to live. The good news for the hospital and the people that live in and work in the hospital area is it gives them an opportunity to live in a place where they don't have to drive very far. They can actually walk across the street and go to work. And it cuts down on transportation. For the people that live in the tract of homes, it's a very good thing, the way the ingress egress works for this. Nobody has to travel through the track in front of any of the homeowners' homes. They got a single path in, around, and are able to get in and out of it at their ease. As a matter of fact, I think that I want to thank the contractor that's put this package together because the safety factors, how he's looked at egress, ingress, I really like the part that he's done. As far as the buffer zones, he's gone the extra mile, I think, in that, and creating a very safe project. Traffic is really a big deal in this, and as I explained. Other than that, I appreciate you guys taking this on. I appreciate your business, and please find this in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, wishing to speak yes, in opposition, Chad Patrick. Name and address for the record, please.
Chad Patrick, 825 North Tucson Street, Post Falls. The reason we're looking at this is because we've had, myself has lived with places like this being built, people jumping our fences, destroying our property, driving their vehicles through our fences, and then we've had to pay the money out of our own pocket. The traffic on Mullan's gotten worse in the past few years here. We've talked with the Post Falls Police Department about the traffic, the noise pollution. It's getting worse even more every day. To see something like this come in, we're worried as far as homeowners around that area. We're worried about, the destruction of our property, people not controlling their noise pollution, and how much is it, it's going to be destroyed watching our property prices go down. I've talked to a few people, they're worried the same thing, that what our homes and everything's worth now is going to go down. So that's one of the things we're really looking at. As far as the EMSs and the traffic and everything, it's just getting worse. And then the more we see Post Falls and everything growing out, everything's getting worse, prices are going up. But with this going in, our property and everything's going to go down. And we're worried as far as the crime rate. I mean, we've seen it. Everybody has seen the crime rate go up in the past few years here. with this coming in, it's gonna get worse. And we don't wanna see people hopping our fences. We don't wanna see somebody driving through because they're erratically get mad. And then, you know, as far as the parking in this area, where is it? Where's the parking gonna be? I mean, that 1.27 acres ain't a lot of property. I have 11.5 acres, and that's a lot of property to put parking in. Where's the parking gonna be for all these? I mean, he says the garage, in front of the garage and elsewhere. Is it gonna be in front of our fences where if somebody gets mad or not paying attention, drives through our yard? That's what we gotta look at. So me, as a property owner in that area and other people I've had spoke to, we don't wanna see it. You know, if you wanna put a couple houses in there, fine, that's one thing. But 18 family residential area, we don't want it. So I hope you guys see it from our point of view. The property owners are already there. We don't want the damage. We don't want the problems. We want to see the traffic go down a little bit because we have hot people taking off of Mullan onto our street, and other streets are very hot. We have kids in the area that play out in the street. We've seen numerous times where kids almost get ran over. Now, whether they're going to that one spot or not, that's still going to increase the traffic in that area. I'm a paramedic firefighter. I see what traffic does. It's not going to get better. And my worry is the kids in that area and our homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Did you? So you got, if you want to fill out the paperwork real quick, we can. Yeah, sorry about that. No worries. Well, if you want to speak first and then fill out the paperwork, we'll just do it that way. That's fine. Name and address for the record, please.
Chad Oakland, 2022 Government Way, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Can I approach the bench? I don't know if that's how you asked that, but I just wanted to give you guys a little couple of handouts. But I get it. Nobody likes change. I can totally appreciate change in your backyard. It could be a lot worse. I don't know if that makes everybody feel better, but there's 55 permitted uses that we could do on that piece of property. Don't even have to go through this. We could walk up to and submit a plan between a grocery store, I'm going to hand these down to you guys.
Yeah.
How does that work, feel?
So as the chair, so we do have rules for written testimony. The chair you guys can look at it to accept it, or you can disregard it. It's kind of up to the chair.
I just photocopied your land use off the internet, but I understand that, sir. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, it's just the table.
And I think another thing is I could, not me, or somebody could go and put a 3 or 4 story apartment mixed use in there right now. That's a permitted use. I was trying to do the best we could, design something where there's no decks looking into people's backyards. I mean, I'm a homeowner from here, from Coeur d'Alene, this area too. So again, I appreciate there's probably no perfect fit except leaving it as a park, and that's probably not going to happen. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I just wanted you guys to see that I think we're probably doing one of the least intrusive projects that we could. Thank you, guys.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. Mr. Dittman, rebuttal?
Thank you, Chairman. Drew Dittman again for the record. Mr. Oakland kind of did my rebuttal for me. Yeah, there are several uses that are outright permitted that are way more intense than what we're proposing that wouldn't require any kind of hearing. As Chad had said, we could go straight to site plan and to build it. I don't want to get into that. Mr. Patrick had concerns about parking and traffic on Mullan. It's outlined in the staff report that there are no anticipated impacts on Mullan due to the traffic from this. Mullan is a minor arterial. It can handle that kind of traffic. As parking was the other issue that's brought up, you can see on the site plan that's up here, there's designated parking spots. They're not along the fence. The fence is where the buffer goes, so there'll be a buffer there against the neighbor's fence. The parking spots are designated. Each unit gets a garage, gets a parking spot in front of their garage, and then there are, like I said, there's 59 total parking spaces. So this project is, from an engineering planning standpoint, is overparked, in my opinion. So with that, I would stand for any additional questions.
Can you just kind of show me with the parking spots compared to, yeah, where the garages are there and then where
So the garages you can see are these dashed.
Okay.
Right here. So
Okay.
So there's 6 units in this building. So that's a garage, and then there's a parking spot in front of that garage.
Okay.
This is the drive aisle that goes straight back, and then there's additional parking. You can see it, overflow parking on this side as well, and then the same up here. So the reason that top building is turned is the fire department had requested a turnaround, a fire department approved turnaround in there. So instead of having 3 buildings like this, we turned that one so that we could get,
Okay.
a fire truck could get in there and turn around.
Okay.
But you can see on the ones to the north as well, you know, so here's the garage. There's a parking spot right in front of that garage.
Okay, that makes more sense. I was backwards on the building and the parking, so, thank you.
Anything else for me?
Sir, we've already passed the, no, we've already passed the public. Sorry. Any other questions for Mr. Dittman?
Thank you.
All right. Close out the hearing and look at the review criteria. All right, criteria A, whether the implementation of the special use permit would or would not conform with the purposes of the applicable zoning district.
Well, it's pretty straightforward that, excuse me, that residential uses are allowed as special uses in that zone. And the one that is outright allowed, permitted, is townhomes, which if someone were to be driving by at 20 miles an hour, they would see townhomes in their mind. They wouldn't necessarily know that they were technically a multifamily thing. So it does, in my mind, conform to the purpose of that zoning district of, let's see, what is it? Limited commercial.
Yeah, I find it kind of odd that it would be an outright permitted use in limited commercial, but it is. And the difference between one lot or 18 and having renters versus single-family homeowners, I don't think is going to be a big difference. And I think both products are needed.
Anybody else? Any other comments for this criteria? All right, next one, please. Whether the proposed use constitutes an allowable special use as established by this chapter of the zoning district involved and complies with all other applicable laws, ordinances, and regulations of the city and state.
Well, it is a,
It does.
yeah,
Yeah, it does.
it's allowed as a special use in the zone, and with regard to the other laws and ordinances, it's gonna meet the building code, it's gonna meet the buffer yards. The buffer, having 8 trees in 100 feet is a tree every 12 feet, which is incredibly dense for a lot of trees along they'll grow together very quickly. And they'll shield all of those backyards from the headlights of people parking in those parking stalls. So, I mean, I think they've demonstrated that they've met the applicable laws, and there's no testimony to the contrary.
Item criteria C. Whether the proposed use will or will not be compatible with the health, safety, and welfare of the public and with land uses in the vicinity of the proposal.
It's pretty much residential land use on that side of
Yeah.
Mullan, so it's pretty compatible.
I would actually think that putting a convenience store would be more, which is an allowed use in that zone, would be more incompatible
Right.
than a residential use that they're
Yeah, or a
proposing.
hotel or
Yeah.
a giant multifamily or.
Hotel or a convenience store that's open 24 hours. I think that would be probably a little more of a
A lot worse.
lot worse than
Mm-hmm.
what they're proposing.
All right. And D, whether the proposed use will or will not comply with the goals and plans found in the comprehensive plan.
That's covered pretty well in the staff report as well as in the applicant's narrative. They go through a lot of goals and policies where this does meet those.
It does comply as far as I'm concerned with the goals and policies. I don't see how that doesn't.
All right. Any other comments?
Well, I just want to say in reviewing the items, the things that can be done outright on that zoning, as much as I feel for you being living around there and stuff, seems to be the least obtrusive thing that you could put there. There's so many things by our zoning that could just come in there without having to come and get a special use permit, just come in and be there, like they said, a store, and I mean, there's a whole list of things, a lot of commercial stuff that could be put in there. So I think that this is probably the least, like I said, obtrusive way that, or use of that piece of land.
I agree with that. I think, I don't love that it's basically apartments, but I do think that the design is nice, and by all appearances, it really does look like townhomes when you drive in there. The part I get caught up on is just that they're rentals, but that's not what I'm here to hear tonight, is whether or not they're rentals. I'm here to sit and listen to whether or not that the use is, I believe the use conforms, and I think it does.
Anything else? All right, with that being said, look for a motion to approve or deny special use permit as presented with any applicable conditions.
Okay, I move to approve SUP 23-2, finding that it meets the approval criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code as outlined in our deliberation, subject to no noted conditions contained in the staff report, and to direct staff to prepare a written reasoned decision.
Okay, we have a motion?
Were there conditions?
There's one
Oh,
condition.
I didn't see one.
Site access points will be required to conform with the city access management requirements. Just one condition.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Subject to one condition as noted in the staff report.
I second.
All right, I have a first and a second. Okay, roll call?
Hampi,
Yes.
Schlotthauer.
Yes.
Stephenson,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Walton,
Yes.
Carey.
Yes.
All right.
How did I miss that?
I'd open up the next hearing if my computer would work.
It's freezing up too.
I keep skidding.
Just wait for that. All right. Open up the next hearing, Bogie Annexation, file case ANNX 23-2.
So yeah, for this public hearing, the owner of this land is Northern Lights LLC, and Drew Didman of Lake City Engineering is also the applicant for this proposal as well. They're looking at a recommendation of zoning for the single-family R1 zoning district on approximately 5 acres as part of the annexation request that would go to City Council. Subject property is located north of East Bogie Drive, as you see here, highlighted in red, about halfway between Cecil Road and Greens Ferry Road. Large lot, single-family residence, Rathrum Prairie Aquifer, and I'm wagering I am correct on this one for the water provider.
You are correct.
With the City of Post Falls providing wastewater services. Here's the surrounding zoning and land uses that you see for the proposal. Looking north, you got the Corbin Meadows R1 subdivisions that's currently being developed. As of now, you see some homes being constructed. East, you do have a Kootenai County single-family residential lot. South, you have a developing Millsap Landing R1 subdivision. The aerial shows county, large county tract, but that's now been with the intent. I think the annexation agreement is close to being done, and they do intend to do a subdivision there. And then you have to the west the Boyd's subdivision, R1 subdivision to the west. So predominantly along the northwest and south, you see developing other R1 subdivisions with R1 zoning. Looking at the review criteria for making a zone change recommendation, the first one is the proposed zoning district consistent with the future land use map and focus area contained in the currently adopted Post Falls comprehensive plan? So look at the designation. It is the low density residential, and it looks at encompassing all types of single family residential uses up to 8 dwelling units per acre. Focus area that's pertinent to this location. It does acknowledge that this area you'll see and some residential development, and it's forecast to see up to 30,000 new residents by 2040 within that focus area you see here in the browned area. Looking at the second criteria, is the proposed zoning district consistent with the goals and policies contained in the currently adopted Post Falls comprehensive plan and are relevant to the area under consideration? Here's some goals here. I'll look at goal 7, highlight that one. Plan for and establish types and quantities of land uses in Post Falls, supporting community needs and city's long-term sustainability. With the R1 zoning district, we do get some diversified R1 type housing on varying size lots and different types of housing products, from different sizes square footage of single story to 2-story structures, helping meet that sector, housing sector's needs. Looking at some other ones here. Maintain the city of Post Falls long-term fiscal health. One way of doing that could be to support diversified housing that allows both the commercial and industrial sectors to provide housing for their workforce. Some policies here: support land use patterns that maintain and enhance community level service, foster long-term fiscal health of the community, maintain and enhance residential quality of life, promote compatible well-designed development. Policy 2, apply or revise zoning designations with careful considerations of future land use mapping, which we discussed, both the Highway 41 corridor and the low density designation, R1 being compatible. We discussed the second one there, compatibility with surrounding land uses. It's surrounded by other R1 zone properties. Infrastructure and service plans, in particular with annexation and subdivisions, you do get frontage improvements and road connectivity that helps meet the infrastructure and service plans, as well as getting water and sewer connections. In the staff report, you also looked at the existing and future traffic patterns and the improvements of Bogie and how that relates in access. It wasn't that long ago we had a finger poking in Post Falls that was a county area. Since then, we've seen, like I mentioned, Corbin Meadows, Boyd's, and some other subdivisions. You're seeing improved roadways, improving street connectivity for public safety going east-west between the Tullamore project that's along 41 and then the other subdivisions that are to the west, be it Fieldstone, the Reserve, and then the elementary school that's to the west of there. right here for infrastructure and service plans. It says that there are a capacity and willingness to serve the site. Existing and future traffic patterns. You see here, there's the mentioned engineering analysis. Here, Bogie Drive, minor collector, connects Greens Ferry Road and West Cecil Road. And you see here the acknowledgement that we would get the additional right-of-way and with as well as the dedication of sidewalk drainage and utility easements to meet that safety, pedestrian safety concern mentioned earlier. Policy 8, encourage compatible infill development. This is infill development and consistent with the surrounding zones. It also is a county island, which is encouraged by the comp plan through its policies. Ensure that adequate land is available for future housing needs, helping serve residents of all ages. I think we're all are aware there's a housing shortage in all sectors. This would help meet that single-family sector, meet the needs there. I've kind of already addressed policy 24 and 27 with Bogie Drive, with some of the improvements that would occur along there with annexation and development. Going to the last criteria, does the proposed zoning district create a demonstrable adverse impact upon delivery of services by any political subdivision providing public services within the city? So this is the point where you're like, wait a second, I haven't seen this review criteria before. Well, because this is actually our new criteria. We have 3 criteria. And where this one goes to is where we have these agencies we notify, and we look at what kind of comments, what are these when it refers to any other political subdivision. Do they have in public services any concerns? Well, we do our notice, we hear from them, and we see that the police department, they are neutral. Yellowstone Pipeline, the YPL, they had no comments. Highway districts, they're in favor. And then Bonneville Power, they had no effect for their right-of-way. Panhandle Health District, they had no comment as it's connecting to municipal services. School district, they were neutral. And the highway district, they said they would comment at the time of the development. Actually, I believe that is
Fire district?
Yes, thank you.
Fire,
That
yeah,
was a
I was
fire
gonna say,
district
is
comment.
that-
So looking at those public agencies that were notified, you can see here that there was no concerns brought up for their proposal. Therefore, one could deduce that this criteria could be met. So any questions for me regarding the proposal and the criteria?
Questions?
Is Bogie is that section of Bogie all city, or is that just happening as these pockets are being annexed?
Trying to find a good map here, the best one. So, yeah, as these projects are coming into the city and annexing, that's how we're getting. So there's 2 5-acre chunks just to the east of this proposal along the north and Millsap, 2 5-acre chunks that will be remaining for getting that connectivity between Greens Ferry Road and Cecil.
So what is happening there? They're paving and stuff, so as they come down Bogie, and there'll just be this little section of like gravel road there, or how is that working?
Well, I may bring Rob up here. I know that from on Corbin Meadows, they did do between here and here, they did
Okay.
do an asphalt temporary,
Like a chip?
like a road there.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know how they're gonna handle this, so you can
Okay.
see Rob would be the best to answer how that'll be handled.
Members of the commission, Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. John pointed out the improvements that were done over on Corbin Meadows. That was a little bit different than standard in that the long length of that subdivision, we were able to take the center line plus 10 feet of that development and took the plus 10 feet and moved that over and get the additional paving we needed to connect the subdivision up to Greens Ferry Road. Because of the amount of traffic up there, that made sense and still allowed for adequate access for the general public as well as emergency services. Over on Bogie Drive, we have a little bit of a different situation. We've recently annexed and currently are in the review process for the Millsap subdivision, and that's going to be going to construction, and they're going to be building the south half of Bogie along their frontage. If this was annexed in and developed, they would be building the remaining north half of it. But we don't have a methodology for getting that last 330 feet
Okay.
from the east, or from their east property line to, you know, almost to the Tullamore subdivision. So that part is going to remain gravel at this time. It is a public right-of-way, but it has never been accepted by the Post Falls Highway District, being in the county, as a public roadway for public maintenance purposes. So it will remain gravel. It would be marked on both ends. It's currently marked on both ends as end of publicly maintained roadway.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we will have to live with that for a while, or the people in that area more so.
So Post Falls like plows up to that, the end of that, and then the county's supposed to,
The county does not plow.
so.
So
okay.
historically, what's been done in that section is the people who live along there take care of the gravel roadway.
So that they can get in and out, but
Yes.
that makes a kind of a issue, doesn't it, in the winter a little bit?
It can, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Any
Thank
other
you. It's probably
questions?
more answer than I needed. I appreciate it. I was wondering how that worked.
Although we can note, though, that we are seeing these annexations coming in at a
Quickly.
ever-increasing rate.
Yeah.
So don't know the duration of when those will come in, but we have seen it
Right.
accelerate since these other subdivisions have been going in.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right. Applicant, come up.
Good evening, Chairman, Commission, Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering, for the record. Bogie Annexation, it's a 5-acre piece of property. It's the same developer, it's Northern Lights Development. It's the same developer that's currently developing the property to the west, Boyd's Landing, which is almost complete. They're circulating, I think, the final plat for signature, so that project is almost complete. It's the same developer, so the anticipation is this will be an extension of that project to the east. It is an infill, it's a county island. It seems to me that it's a very, very straightforward annexation. We're requesting an R1 zoning, which matches everything that surrounds it. John, you know, these are the 3 criteria. John went through those, so I'm not gonna go through them again unless there's specific questions that you guys may have as it relates to the project. But again, it's a 5-acre annexation request with R1 zoning, fairly straightforward. Questions?
Any questions?
No.
I agree.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any public testimony?
Sorry, no.
No. No public testimony. All right, no need for rebuttal then.
Wait.
All right, close out the hearing and go to the review criteria.
So as John stated, this is our first annexation using the new criteria. So I thought I'd run us through this one
Got to make
As
sure it
our-
goes smoothly.
as our first time out. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll remember from when we adopted these, it really is just streamlining the same information that we've always covered. So it's just a little bit more contained all in one question.
I see why you picked that one up.
All right, so the first review criteria is is the proposed zoning district consistent with the future land use map and focus area contained in the comprehensive plan? So what designation does the future land use map give the property, and what does the focus area provide for? Kind of the guiding questions.
Right, the future land use map is low-density residential.
Yeah.
This is single-family residential, R1.
Yep.
And the focus area says that the further away you get from Highway 41, the more lower the density should be. So that fits both of those criteria, or all of the criteria in the criteria?
Sure.
Anything else?
Okay.
So, is the proposed zoning district consistent with the goals and policies contained in the comprehensive plan? So, which goals and policies do you believe are applicable or inapplicable, and what facts support that?
Well, John went through a lot of them. I think probably one of the most prevalent ones is the focus on infill development. And this is a county pocket surrounded completely by the city. And the city zonings all the way around it are consistent with those with an R1. So they are R1 all the way around. And we can go through them, but I think John covered a lot of them.
I was just gonna say, like, policy 2 talks about the future land use, which we just talked about, infrastructure and connectivity, future traffic patterns.
I think Nancy hit on something about, the extension of Bogie Drive. It's piece by piece, but, I guess one could look at it as having it sucks that there's 300 feet that's still gravel, but for the people that live there, at least they don't have a quarter mile that's not, that's gravel still. Now they've got a quarter mile that's paved.
Yeah, I
And
remember
the
when it
and the
was a lot
city's-
longer, yeah.
Right, and the city's now plowing it where they don't have to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to that end, it's really good for the extension of the infrastructure in the area.
Agreed.
Yeah, it cuts both ways. Less gravel for them to drive, more traffic and dust in front of their house, unfortunately.
Right.
Right. And our last review criteria is kind of prove in the inverse. You'll notice demonstrable adverse impact is all caps. That's because it's a defined term in our code, which is it's defined as a provable or verifiable negative impact impacting the ability of a public agency to provide services within the city beyond those created by the current zoning classification. So this one really is speaking to other agencies and their ability to provide services. So
They didn't seem to think so.
We saw none.
And there were 7 that had written comments and no concerns with any of them.
So this one would cover agencies, public service, and like water and sewer and all that? Okay.
All the agencies that we saw the reports from.
All right.
anything else?
Do we have any other comments? So the motion for this will just be for the zoning.
Yeah, so just like always, this is a recommendation on zoning to the city council. The city council will make the final decision on the annexation and zoning based on your recommendation.
Okay. With that being said, who would like to make a motion?
I will. I move to recommend approval of annexation, of the Bogie annexation, ANNX-23-2, finding that the requested zoning meets the approval criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code as outlined in our deliberation, and direct staff to recommendation to be provided to City Council of R1, subject to conditions 1 through 4.
Okay. I have a motion. I have a second.
I second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Carrie,
Yes.
Walton,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Stephenson,
Yes.
Schlotthauer,
Yes.
Hampi.
Yes.
All right. I'll move on to City Council. Next item on the agenda is administrative staff reports, and we do have some zoning informational handouts.
I think we get a keep these.
Hello, Anna Stahl, Planner 1 with the City of Post Falls. I'm going to be sharing the zoning information handouts that the planning department has been working on. We got started on these at the request of Nancy. She was looking for some easily accessible zoning information. We put together the land use chart, which is a single handout, and this could be really useful for anyone who has a specific development in mind, or a business that they want to start, or maybe a business that they want to move to Post Falls. They could take a look at this chart and get a quick and easy idea of these zones will work for my goals and these zones will not work. And then it would also be useful for anyone hoping to annex into the City of Post Falls to get a good idea of what the potential zones that they can annex in with could be. The zoning code sheets are a good place to start for anyone who has a piece of property in Post Falls already and want to know what they can do with that piece of property based on what it is already zoned at. This is an example of what you see on the land use chart. We start on the left with the land use type. Cottage home is one. Most of the pictures on that chart were taken in Post Falls. This is the first cottage home in Post Falls up on the little one there. And essentially, you'll look at the land use type, and then through that column, you can see whether it's permitted in the zone, if there are any special conditions to it being permitted in the zone, just the very basic information of whether you can move forward or not. Another land use type would be a sit-down restaurant. If someone wants to start a restaurant, they can take a quick look, see whether it's permitted, whether they need a development agreement or not, and they can go from there. Moving on to the zoning code handouts, we put together 10 of these for 10 different zones within Post Falls that get a lot of questions about what people can do. The main information we've got on them is in the upper left, there's information on the intent of the zone and the type of community that it is hoping to accommodate. And then we've also got a list of commonly requested principal uses, as well as uses that are allowed with a special use permit. And in the residential zone handout specifically, there's an additional column for accessory uses. For the residential zones, primary uses are going to be residences at various densities. Accessory uses will be garages, shops, etc. And then again, we'll have the special use permit uses as well. And we do have some information on the setback requirements and the lot coverage, other information like that. We also have that information on our bulk and placement table handout, but this goes into more detail, especially for the mixed zones, and can give people a better idea of what they're working with in specific zones. And that's all we've got. Any questions?
I think these are great. This is exactly what I was, looking for.
These exist for the other zonings?
Cool.
Yeah, we've got for R1S, R1, R2, R3, RM, TM. We've got them all on the website. There's 10 of them total. We didn't do anything for the mobile home zone or high industrial because those ones are a little more straightforward. And then we didn't do anything for the smart code zones because those already have handouts.
No questions, but a general comment. These are fantastic for design professionals who are unfamiliar with city code. It's a quick reference guide, and it's definitely a great, very, very useful thing for the development community, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner comments.
Thank you for all the work putting those together.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it was about 2 years ago
I-
you brought up the, so it's taken a
And
bit.
you had a while.
It's taken a bit to, squeeze it through, but yeah. It was a great project for Anna when she came on here at the city and she, grabbed it by the horns and, she was able to learn our zoning districts pretty quick by
Yeah,
going through
really,
that.
huh?
Well, you knocked it out of the park.
That's awesome.
Very good. John, I just had a couple thoughts or comments here. The, within the public hearings, the school numbers and stuff is from last year. Is it possible to reach out to the school system if they have the new numbers available? for the
Yes,
new
we am glad you brought that up. We actually have reached out, and we're
Okay.
looking at getting and updating that comment letter that's attached to the staff reports with hopefully this year's
school
numbers.
Cool, perfect. Cool. And then I just want to make sure everybody with the changes in the city staff here, everybody's getting emails from city staff, especially since we're going to have this next meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting them? Okay, cool. And then I think this is going to be for Rob. Since all my neighbors know I'm on the commission here, they keep asking me when Prairie and Greens Ferry is going to open because I live in Fieldstown. So I was wondering if you could answer that question. And maybe even the new Prairie roundabout over there. That was a little delayed maybe.
On Prairie Avenue at Greens Ferry Road, we're estimating that Greens Ferry Road will be open within the next 2 weeks. And then on the roundabout that's being constructed on Prairie Avenue at Zoros Road, which is, was it halfway between the one that got completed just a few weeks ago and Highway 41, that one is scheduled for completion by the end of October.
Cool, thank you.
For the
Hey.
record, the new one that's completed is beautiful, and I
Nice.
designed it.
You designed that,
And I'm
right?
biased, but it's fantastic.
I've been on it twice.
Rob, while you're here, curious on since we talked about impact fees and roads and that kind of thing, is Bogie Drive one of those things that the city would look at and finish eventually if the annexation didn't happen, or is there like a general timetable for?
So we have a list of impact fee projects, and those are all capacity-related projects that we can spend the money on, and we've identified them as serving a larger need for the city in either the next 5, 10, or 20-year period. Difficulty with a little gravel piece of roadway that's in the county is it is in the county. So we do not spend our dollars on county roadways. Closest exception we've had to that, and it really wasn't an exception, was the recent construction of the Prairie Avenue and Idaho Street roundabout. We contributed, I think, about $30,000 towards that roundabout's construction, but 25% of that intersection was in the city, and the remainder was in the county, and so that's why we were able to participate in that, as that was a city impact fee project. Probably more than you wanted to know, but I hope that answers your question.
I was just curious, like, does it wait for annexation, or is it something that you look at eventually?
Cool. Thanks, Rob. Any other comments? Next item is adjournment. If somebody wants to make a motion.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All right, so move. Meeting adjourned.